Welcome to the OSU Extension Integrated Pest Management sponsoring of the Bed Bugs of Ohio. We have, glad for you to be here this morning. We have Dr. Susan Jones, who's going to be giving us a couple-hour presentation about bed bugs. This is actually one of two webinars we'll be giving. We have this one this morning. We have one next week about the same time. So if you like what you see, we certainly encourage you to come back next week and listen to part two. It'll be different content. So we're going to be turning this over to Susan here, just so you know that this resource is going to be recorded. So if for some reason you want to refer to it later on or point people toward it later on, you'll be able to do that. I'm going to be monitoring a chat box that we're going to pop up here. So if you have any questions as the webinar goes on, feel free to type those into the chat box, and then we'll stop periodically and we will review those and have Susan answer those as best she can. We're scheduled for about 2 hours here. I think with that, I don't think there's any other. Okay, so there's a chat box, if you didn't hear that, that should be accessible to you on your end of the Zoom session. Be sure to type your questions in there and hit return, and then they'll pop up on our end as well. And so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Is that right, Susan? You all set?
All set.
Okay, great. Let us know how the audio is, if it's strong enough for you. We have not much ability, but we'll try to speak up if it's too low. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Okay, well, thank you for being here for this webinar. Bed bugs are a serious problem, not just in Ohio, but throughout the U.S., throughout the world. I entitled this first webinar, Know Your Enemy, because if you understand some of the biology and the habits of bed bugs, then you will better understand the treatment strategies. And the second webinar, we're really going to go in detail into treatment strategies. In today's webinar, this initial one, I'll mention a few details, but if you could hold your questions regarding treatment until after the second webinar, that would be a more efficient use of time. So I started working on bed bugs in about 2004, and I can't get this to go forward.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
I started working on it in about 2004. And so over the decade plus, I have attained a lot of knowledge about bed bugs, and these are some of the things I'd like you to take away today. Understand a little bit about the growing bed bug problem. I'm going to focus on Ohio. I want to make sure that you can recognize bed bugs, all the different stages, as well as their telltale signs, because oftentimes you aren't going to see the bug itself. Understand some of the biological characteristics, some of the health effects that bed bugs cause. Make sure you can protect yourself and your clients and your friends and neighbors, disseminate this information to others. Some of the questions that you want to ask clients who suspect that they have bed bugs, and then some of the very useful resources that I found on bed bugs. So I started reading about bed bugs in the late 1990s. I thought it was just a passing phase, but I was very wrong. We were reading news articles worldwide saying that bed bugs had made a comeback. This was in developed countries. In underdeveloped countries, bed bugs had always been a factor. When you're dealing with famine, when you're dealing with war, and you're dealing with bed bugs really fall to a very minor issue. But in developed countries, they were making a big impact, and it was something they really hadn't dealt with for a long time. Why have we seen this resurgence of bed bugs? Well, for one thing, there's so much international travel and commerce, and as I'll talk about later, bed bugs are excellent hitchhikers. They will get in items and you will not even know it, and you will move them around. The type of housing that we have also contributes to bed bug problems, particularly where you have high tenant turnover. If somebody has bed bugs and they try to leave bed bugs behind by moving, it is extremely difficult to do that. Oftentimes, you'll take the bed bugs with you. But one of the big factors has to do with insecticides. Our pesticide use has changed. Some of our very effective insecticides are no longer allowed for use indoors. We haven't re-registered some insecticides. We're using more baits, which is a more rational approach for ants and cockroaches. And then we're dealing with resistance. And so I will really, in the next webinar, talk about more of these details regarding insecticides. But let's look at the problem in the US. Okay, Orkin and Terminex are two of the big nationwide companies that actually keep records of bedbug treatments. And so what happens when you look at these records is Ohio is showing up time after time. There are other big cities as well, but no other state has a number of large metropolitan areas that Ohio has. So these are the latest records that we have from Orkin and Terminex, and on the left we see that Orkin has Columbus up here, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Akron, Canton area. And for the first time on Terminex's list, Columbus has fallen off the top 10. Now, as a Buckeye, we always want to be in the top 10. You don't want to be in this top 10 here. But is this really reflective of what is going on in Ohio? I did a survey of the Ohio pest management industry in 2011 and again in 2016. I really have to thank the pest management industry in Ohio because they responded in a fabulous manner to my request for information about bed bugs. I had a response rate of over 30%. I'm writing up an article right now for publication in a journal regarding these survey results. But in the 2011 survey, I said, go back to 2005 and let me see some information on how many treatments you did in 2005, because that was close to the time, like I said, I started in 2004 really working on bed bugs. And here's what they told me. So these are the estimated total number of treatments by licensed pest management professionals in each county. This is a heat map. And so the darker the color, it means the higher the incidence of treatments. And so back in 2005, these were the top counties for bed bugs. They did not provide it on a city basis, but rather on a county basis. And Cincinnati here is top in the entire state with a color that matches more than 4,000 treatments in that county. Now, I also looked at the population size, and Hamilton County is third in population size. So it's not simply a factor that there are more people in Hamilton County. Second on the list was Columbus, but you look at the color here, and it is associated with about 1,000 treatments. So 4 times as many treatments being done in Hamilton County than in Franklin County. And then we've got a 3-way tie with Butler County near just north of Cincinnati. We're up by Toledo with Lucas County, and then Cuyahoga County in Cleveland as all tying for number 3. So let's jump to 2011. Now we have a scale here that has jumped 4 to 5 times the scale of 2005. So on the low end, 5,000 treatments, high end, looking at around 16,000 treatments. And who is number 1? It's now moved to Columbus. And Columbus has the second highest population. Hamilton County is number 2. Dayton area, Montgomery County is number 3. There's a corridor now between Dayton and Cincinnati, with all of these counties having large numbers of treatments. And then fifth is up in the northern part of the state. Moved to 2016, and we've had to adjust our scale 8 to 10 times higher, with 10,000 treatments to 30,000 treatments being shown by the heat map. And again, Columbus is in the #1 position. Cuyahoga County is #2. Toledo now comes in #3. Hamilton County, Cincinnati is #4. And Summit County, up in the Cleveland area, is #5. So this problem has spread all over the state. And when we analyze this, let me see what's this. Something has popped up here. Okay, if we look at the 9 most populated counties, we see that there's been a much faster increase in bed bugs than in the other counties, in Franklin County, in Summit County, in Stark County, and in Lucas County up here in Toledo. So up in the northeast part of the state, central part of the state, and northwest part of the state. So we're seeing the fastest, the most increasing trend when it comes to bed bugs. So I want you to be aware, if you're in these parts of the state, that we are seeing larger numbers of treatments. Now, the good news from these surveys is people are recognizing bed bugs a bit faster. And so we aren't seeing the massive size of infestations. However, we're seeing more and more in terms of the number of treatments that pest management industry is doing for bed bugs. According to that survey, here is the average percentage of work that is done at different types of sites. Bed bugs only occur indoors. They are not an outdoor pest. And residences are making up the largest share of bed bug work, particularly multi-unit residences. So your apartments and your condominiums, and then slightly lower on the scale are your single family homes. And then way down, you've got your hotels and motels, hospitals, doctor's offices, nursing homes, college dorms, schools, office buildings, vehicles. All of these continue to be an issue, but nothing like where people rest and sleep and spend significant amounts of time. So what are bed bugs? Well, they are a true bug. They're an insect. As I said, they only live indoors. They will not move across a yard to get from one home to another. But I'll show you in apartments, they will readily move from one apartment to a next door apartment to an apartment on a floor above or a floor below. They typically feed at night, but if you see them out in the open in the daytime, that's typically an indication you have a massive infestation. If the only time they have is to feed during the daytime, then they adjust their behavior and they start to feed during the daytime. And the only thing they feed on is blood. The unfortunate news for us is they would prefer to feed on humans. If humans aren't available, though, they will find other warm-blooded animals. They'll feed on rodents, on bats, on birds, on pets, but on these alternate hosts, they seek sites that don't have a lot of hair. So on your dog, it may be the underbelly. They don't like to put their little mouth parts through thick hair. And that's one of the reasons they really like humans, is there's not a lot of hair that they have to make their way through in order to find skin and to be able to penetrate the skin. Now, they do cause significant economic, physical, and mental distress. I'll talk a bit about the health implications of bed bugs. They are not caused by bad housekeeping. You can be the best housekeeper in the world and you can still get bed bugs. However, if you have a lot of clutter in your home, you keep bed bugs because it offers them a lot of hiding places. But we really need to work to overcome this unnecessary stigma associated with bed bugs, because literally bed bugs can happen to anyone. And I want to make sure that you can protect yourself from getting bed bugs. When we talk about bed bug management, we're using an IPM, or an integrated pest management approach. And the top thing we have to do is correctly identify the pest. From there, we do our thorough inspection. We use sanitation or cleaning measures. We use non-chemical measures. And then in many cases, we're using insecticides. But you have to know where to apply the insecticides. You want to target them to where the bed bugs are hiding. So let's talk first about identifying the pest and doing the thorough inspection. This is the bed bug life cycle. There are males and females, and they look a bit different at all stages except for the egg, depending on whether the bug has fed or not. So here on the left is a male that is unfed. Here's a male that is fed. So body's greatly elongated. It is a bit inflated. Now they tend to hide after they take a blood meal, so you don't usually see a big fat bed bug. You're more likely to see them in a somewhat flattened stage. But this is a female, and her body is even more elongated. Your eggs can definitely be seen. You've got your 5 nymphal stages, or your 5 immature stages. Again, an insect that you can see with the naked eye, but they're often hiding. Now, how to recognize if it's a bed bug? Well, the size and the shape is going to give you a bit of information. They tend to have this somewhat oval shape. As I said, this is one that is actually in the process of feeding, and so it's greatly enlarged in size. And you usually do not see those. They're feeding at nighttime when you're sound asleep. And then the body, it tends to be flattened when they haven't fed, swollen when they have fed. That range in size from about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch long if they're adult stage. And then your smallest nymphs are less than 1/10 of an inch long. Imagine the size of a sesame seed. You can see a sesame seed. That's about the size of your tiniest nymphs, or your immature stages. And for the earliest nymphs, here's a first stage nymph, one that is just emerged from an egg. It's very clear, it's almost colorless, but soon as they feed as the first stage, they look like a little droplet of red. And that's because their body is totally full of blood. They're engorged. So they're crimson at this stage. Once they get to be a little bit larger nymph, your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th stage nymph, they tend to be these various shades of brown. Here in the center, this black, you're actually looking through, and you're seeing the inside, and you're seeing the digestive tract of the bug, and you're seeing the partially digested blood that is in the insect. So those are just some of the general features. When you get to the adult stage, you can tell males from females. Why do you want to know this? Well, if you're in a school situation and somebody finds a bug, you want to know if it's a nymph, because that means it's an immature stage. It has not yet reached sexual maturity. You want to know if it's a male, because now it's not reproducing, or you want to know it's a female. And so what you're looking at is the shape of the abdomen, the tip of the body, and it has this broader view for the female, comes much more to a taper on the male. That's whenever you look at them from the top. When you turn them over, now you're going to see additional feature. And here you can see the female again with that broad rounded tip to the abdomen. But right here, there's an arrow. This is where mating takes place, and there's going to be a little indent like this on the female. You do not see that on the male, but you still see that taper, that V-shaped. And so this is somewhat obscured when you have a fully fed bed bug, but if you can take a shot of the underside, an image of the underside, and see this little V shape right here, then you'll be able to distinguish your adult female from your adult males. Every stage we've got male and female nymphs. We just don't know how to recognize them. There are no distinguishing external sexual characteristics as they are in the adult stage. With my OSU surveys of the pest management industry, I asked them to give me some information about what people were reporting as bed bugs, so these bed bug imposters, and top on the list were carpet beetles. And this is the same thing I find in my lab. People will bring in insects for identification, and carpet beetles are very commonly misidentified. There's a reason for that, and I'll tell you about that. Cockroaches, especially the nymphs. Now, I pointed out here the circe, or a cirrus here, a cirrus here. Cockroaches have these little prongs at all stages toward the tip of the body. And so when you see a little tiny cockroach nymph, look to see if you see these circe. I have been in homes and found bed bugs and cockroaches clustered together. And I totally understand why, to a non-professional, why they might think that they were the exact same insect. Now, we even get in people bringing these big bed bugs, these stink bugs. And I say, you're in a world of hurt if that stink bug is sucking your blood. This is a plant feeder. It sucks out plant juices. It doesn't suck out blood. It is a close relative of bed bugs. And in fact, the odor of bed bugs is very similar to the odor of your garden stink bugs. And then the other imposters were things like bat bugs, other insects, and non-insects. The pest management professionals were saying that about 15% of their customers wanted a bed bug treatment even when they had a different pest. That is illegal. You are not supposed to be treating for a pest that isn't there. Your treatment should be specific. Your site should be specific for the insect that is actually causing the problem. So a couple of years ago, with support from the EIPM program and NIFA, we developed these household insect identification cards. I want to point out on these cards, up on the left, we've got the bed bugs. Down here, we have bat bugs. Bat bugs are a very close relative of bed bugs, and so this area right here, we've enlarged, and I want you to see these short hairs on this region of the body, which is called the pronotum, and really long hairs that are here on the bat bug. A bat bug looks like a hairy bed bug once you've seen a lot of them. But in order to see these features, you really need to have a dissecting microscope or a good hand lens. And you want to make sure it's not a bat bug because bat bugs are common in Ohio. Now, not near as common as bed bugs, but you definitely want to rule it out, because if you've got bat bugs, you need to be targeting the attic, the roost of the bed bugs versus the indoor environment when you've got bed bugs. But carpet beetle shed skins over here on the right, and bed bug shed skins People confuse these all the time. Now, if you use a hand lens, you will notice that these have long hairs all over them, and bed bugs do not have long hairs all over them, but these hairs break off, and so you may not see them. But you really need to rule out carpet beetles versus bed bugs. And there's a reason for why people think they have bed bugs, and that is in the larval stage of your carpet beetles, the hairs cause dermatitis in humans. Not everybody has this skin reaction, but some humans will have a itchy rash and they will break out in these spots, or have blisters in some cases, itching like they have bed bugs. They see these shed skins, they think they have bed bugs, and it's actually carpet beetles. So make sure that you know that this is an alternate pest that can cause dermatitis in sensitive individuals, not every individual, but enough of them that you need to recognize it. It's the larvae or the immatures of the carpet beetles that are causing that dermatitis. The adults are actually feeding on pollen and nectar, and these are some of the plants that the adult likes to feed on. They fly, so they will fly indoors. If you have spirea, crepe myrtle in the vicinity, and these are common in Ohio and in other states, and you've got a door that opening and closing, some of these carpet beetles will fly in. They are very tiny, about the shape of a lady beetle, but much smaller. Your larva is going to feed on animal materials, so woolen items, carpets, furs, animal hides, insect pupae, dead insects, and then they also can feed on plant materials like a stored product pest, corn, rye meal, red pepper, rice, and such. So you have to look at your clothing, whether you have, you're a hunter and you maybe have a deer head that you've mounted on the wall. If you have silk clothing, you have to look in your pantry for the larvae, and then adults are coming in from outside and they're not causing any sort of reaction, but they're perpetuating the problem. So I want to make sure that you are aware of this issue. OSU does have a pest diagnostic clinic. I think that some people may not be familiar with this who are watching the webinar and not familiar with all of the offerings of Ohio State University, but it costs $20 for an insect ID. The clinic does other things such as identification of plant diseases. The website is PPDC, Plant and Pest Diagnostic Clinic. .osu.edu, and here's the phone number. So that's a resource that is available for the general public. It's not just bugs that you need to recognize. You need to recognize the telltale signs, and top on the list are black fecal spots. Okay, these bugs poop. They poop a lot, and they hang out in their feces because the feces are emanating a pheromone, a chemical that the bugs use to communicate with each other. And so it is communicating to the bugs that, oh, I can find other members of my species in this general area. It's a good place to hang out. And so underside of furniture on the left here, all these black fecal spots are caused by bed bugs. Live bugs you see typically at nighttime, not during the daytime. You see blood stains when you roll over and crush a bug in the act of sleeping, or whenever you see one and that is recently fed and you splat it on the wall. Blood stains are not common from bed bugs, but black fecal spotting is common. Welts typically occur on exposed skin. I'll talk about that. And as I mentioned, that buggy odor like a garden stink bug. Some of the challenges that bed bugs present. Okay.
Let's just take a break for a minute. Let you grab some water there.
Okay.
We've kind of gone through the identification piece. Right now we're broadcasting from the Ag Library and Ag Admin, and Susan is using the controls to navigate through her PowerPoint, so I'm not able to respond to any of the questions right now that might pop up in the chat box. But I do see that Rory asked a question about, will Susan's presentation be available in a handout form? And Susan, are you willing to share your slides with people?
You bet.
She says absolutely, she would love to do that. So we'll either place those on the IPM website or place those somewhere on a website you'll hear about later on, the u.osu.edu/bedbugs. So it'll be posted there. But if you did happen to come in just a bit late, you should be able to find the chat box somewhere on your Zoom. I think it's under the More feature. And then any questions you might have, feel free to type those in as we go along. We'll let Susan continue, but if she needs a drink every now and again, we're going to stop her, let her rehydrate, and then continue forward. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to give you a chance to get a little sip of water and get ready for the next 90 minutes. Okay, wonderful. So any questions, please feel free to type those in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Okay, so the challenges. They come out at nighttime, as I mentioned. They can feed on multiple types of warm-blooded animals. They're hiding from floor to ceiling. They are called bed bugs, but I'll show you some of their many hiding places. I'll talk about their life cycle. There could be many, many generations in a year. They tend to disperse. They can survive starvation for months and months. The bite in humans can cause variable reactions or no reaction at all, and insecticide resistance, and we can just keep going on and on with the challenges that these bugs cause. But in terms of developmental time, this is important because they are indoor insects, and if you keep your house warm, very warm, like 86 degrees, your bed bugs will go from egg stage all the way to reproducing adult in 3 weeks' time. Elderly residents tend to keep their homes extremely hot, and I find massive infestations in senior residences, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the temperatures are so warm, it's speeding up the life cycle. But many of us keep our homes at 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will take 3 months' time to go from egg to reproducing adult. So in 3 months' time, you have another generation that is of bugs producing eggs, because these bugs can live many months. We think they can even live up to a year. So in a year's time, you have not only that first, those initial bugs, but you have many other generations as well. And these life history characteristics are going to show you why it's so important to detect the problem early on and why it's important to treat early on. When the female lays an egg, she secretes a liquid, and that liquid adheres the egg to the surface. The eggs are then glued in place. They are not sticky eggs. I hear people say, oh, I'm really concerned about getting an egg stuck to me when I go into a residence. I said, that's not going to happen. The eggs are affixed in place. They aren't loose in the environment. But I've even seen newspapers say that, oh, worry about these sticky eggs. No, they are not sticky. They have been affixed in place, stuck to a surface where they're adhered and will not come off. Now, a female in a day's time is going to lay anywhere from 1 to 12 eggs, And in her lifetime, she's going to lay about 150 eggs. This is way down from our bed bugs of the 1940s. I go back and look at that literature, and it says a single female will produce 400 to 500 eggs. So the fact that we have resistance as such a factor, insecticide resistance, bed bugs have had to allocate a lot of their internal resources to combating insecticides and resistance mechanisms, and it's taken away from this life history trait. So they aren't producing as many eggs. How long does it take for an egg to hatch? Generally about 6 to 17 days. This is really important because eggs aren't necessarily penetrated by every insecticide, and you want to reapply the insecticide after 1 to 2 weeks, and it has to do with the fact that your eggs hatch in about 1 to 2 weeks. So that's the rationale behind the timing of your second and third treatment has to do with egg hatch. I mentioned there are these 5 nymphal stages. In order for a nymph to grow, it has to obtain a blood meal. If it doesn't obtain a blood meal, it just stays in that nymphal stage until it can feed, and once it's fed, then it has the necessary resources so that it has the energy to molt. Your adults require repeated blood meals. We think that in some exceptional cases, probably it's up to 18 months, about a year or so, and they'll be able to survive many months of starvation. Now, a bedbug does not feed every day. A bedbug feeds on average once every 6 to 7 days, so about once a week. That's why early on in an infestation, you don't get new bites every day because the bugs aren't feeding every day. If you have a couple of them, they're coming out every 6 days or so to take a blood meal. So it's important to know things about their life history characteristics and their habits. They don't have wings, they can't fly, they can't jump, but they do have legs that are adapted for walking and climbing, and they can crawl very fast. They would prefer to hide in tiny cracks and crevices, dark protected sites. They really like fabric surfaces, wood surfaces, paper surfaces. But if those aren't available, you will find them on metal, you will find them on plastic. They have a difficult time navigating porcelain surfaces and also glass surfaces. But other than porcelain and glass, pretty much any type of surface, they're going to be able to crawl on that, and they're going to cling very tightly to those surfaces. So if you're using a vacuum cleaner, which is a useful tool, as I'll mention, you need to be doing this scraping action, particularly for eggs. You aren't going to get the eggs off unless you are using a scraping action, and the bugs in some cases are clinging on so tightly that again you have to do this scraping action with your vacuum cleaner. And these are some of the places that they will hide. I bet you can probably guess where this hanging picture is. It's right above the bed. It is close to the sleeping individual. It's a protected site. How many times do you take that picture off the wall and check behind it? I know in my house, I wouldn't be taking it down maybe once every decade, if that. This is from a Columbus apartment, and here we see shed skins, we see eggs, we see a recently fed bug, we see all of the black fecal spotting, and so excellent hiding place. Here, underside of furniture. This is from Cincinnati apartment, and a massive number of bugs, all defecating, hanging out on the underside of this furniture. Inside electrical outlets, here we see signs of the bugs. Here we see shed skins. We see fecal spotting inside of this electrical outlet. And this is a different Columbus apartment where a massive infestation. There's a piece of furniture very close to this carpeting, and the bugs just have their heads buried in the carpeting like an ostrich with its head buried in the sand. They think nobody can see them. And we were using a vacuum to vacuum up these bugs. And every time we ran the wand over the area, the bugs would just come boiling out of the carpet. It was such a massive infestation. So what happens if you miss some of these hiding places when you are trying to treat for bed bugs? Well, it means you have left a lot of bed bugs behind that are going to continue to feed on the individual, and if they're adults and females, they're going to continue to lay eggs and breed. Mattresses and box springs, it's not uniform signs. Oftentimes it'll be clusters of bugs or under the welting, and you literally need to be turning the welting as you move down and examine it to find the bugs that are tucked under the welting. They like tight hiding places between the mattress and the box spring. There's another place. This is a dorm room, and we know to look behind the baseboard because we see these little black dots right here in the corner. Now, you might say, well, weren't those perhaps mold or mildew? You see mold and mildew typically in your bathrooms, kitchens, wet areas, not in your living environment. And if you would run your gloved finger over this site, if it was mold or mildew, it would smear due to the spores, but not so with the bedbug feces. They dry very quickly. They are fixed in place and they're stuck in place. And so when we saw those signs, we knew to peel back the baseboard. Here you can see massive number of shed skins, here bugs. This entire baseboard had massive numbers of bugs, and our bed was over here a few feet away. If we hadn't recognized this as being a hiding place, we would have left a lot of bed bugs behind. If you're in multi-family housing and you have a unit here, bed bugs are not going to be happy just staying in that one unit. As they breed and as the numbers increase, the bugs start to move, and they will move between common walls. So nowadays with bed bugs, apartment managers and the pest management industry needs to realize that you really need to be inspecting those rooms, those apartments that share a common wall. Sometimes it can vary with the type of construction materials, but realize that they will spread to adjacent rooms. This paper came out recently from Rutgers, where they had marked bed bugs and then released them and recaptured them. And they found that all stages of bed bugs, so the nymphs and the adults, were moving extensively within an apartment, between apartments. They were moving from infested apartments to units down the hall, on the floor above and the floor below. They were dispersing away from hosts. They were dispersing toward human hosts. They also found that females tended to be a bit more active dispersers than males. But I want to show you a few years before that paper came out, we had been talking about what we were observing in vacant homes. And here's a home that had been vacated in the Columbus area, had a massive number of bed bugs, but visually we were seeing that most of the bed bugs were in the master bedroom. Now, we were using different monitoring tools, and so where you see a little blue dot, we had put a climb up interceptor. They're typically put under furniture legs, and so you see that in the master bedroom, we put them under the bed. Same thing in the guest bedroom, and then you can also put them just out in the open to see if bed bugs will fall into them. And then verify bed bug detectors are no longer on the marketplace, but they had lures in them that would draw the bed bugs in. Notice here, I asked the homeowner, keep the temperature at 65 to 70, even though it's vacant, don't turn it down to about 55 or 60 because that causes bed bugs to go into sort of a state of hibernation or dormancy where they don't move around. You want to keep your temperatures where bed bugs tend to be active. And so 9 days later, we came back to see where we had captured bed bugs in this vacant home. With our climb ups under the bed legs, we had only captured them in the master bedroom, which is where visually we were seeing most of the bugs. But our verifies told us an entirely different story. They said, bed bugs have been moving throughout this home and being captured in these detectors in the dining room and in the living room, in the guest bedroom, as well as the master bedroom. And so we had captured many more bed bugs using a active monitoring device, active meaning it has something in it that's drawing in the bugs versus just passive where there's just something that they're going to fall into and not be able to get out of. But it was revealing that the bugs were moving extensively in that home. We used the same home because we were testing a product called Circle, a neem seed oil product. It ended up that we had to treat, we treated 4 times, applying about 16 gallons of product before we got the bugs down to very low levels. If we'd been using just visual inspections, we would have thought that after that first treatment, we had gotten rid of the bugs, but they were still present in small numbers, and we were capturing them using our climb ups and using our verified detectors. But I want you to see how long we captured nymphs. 110 days, and these were bugs that were not having access to a blood meal. So these bugs were starving. Some of them were being killed by the circle, and some of them were just dying due to the stress of moving all around, but they still had survived in the nymphal stage for 110 days. We captured live adults for 145 days. So this just gives you an idea of how long bed bugs are able to survive under very stressful starvation conditions. They're also very good hitchhikers, and they will climb into your luggage, they'll climb into furniture, bedding, backpacks, purses, and you won't even know that you have a few of these hitchhikers. You'll take those items to a new location and you'll bring some bed bugs with you, and who knows if bed bugs are going to climb out of the item while you have them there. Bed bugs really impact handicapped and elderly individuals. Here is a walker, and on this metal wheel, you'll notice, is a little bed bug who is clinging very tightly to that surface. The wheel is going around and around, and the bed bug is hanging on, and at some point it lets go, and now it's in a new environment. Here with this individual in a wheelchair, all of these white dots are the remnants of bed bug eggs. You can actually see a bug here, you can see a bug here, and all day long, these bugs will just come out They will feed on this poor individual. They will go back and hide in the wheelchair. This is absolutely a horrible situation. When you see bed bugs out in the open like this, you know that his entire wheelchair has a massive bed bug infestation in his apartment, or his residence also has a massive bed bug infestation. He's basically at the mercy of these blood-sucking bugs. It's a horrible, horrible situation. Here are shoes. And this is after we visited a home, a high-rise apartment complex in the Dayton area. And my research associate wore these shoes for the one and only time. And we came out of the heavily, heavily infested apartment, and he had 13 bed bugs that had tucked away in his shoes, enough to start a massive infestation. Shoes are something that you definitely need to check whenever you go into an infested apartment. And I know a lot of people who are social workers go into homes. I wear shoes that are bald on the bottom, that don't have any recesses. Sometimes I have worn booty, the covers that you put over your shoes, but your shoes are a great way to take hitchhikers with you. This is from a dorm room where a student had bed bugs and was storing his luggage under his bed. That is not a good practice anymore. You shouldn't be storing anything under your bed. Here we see eggs affixed to the surface. They're down near the wheel well. They're in a crevice here. We found the bed bugs in his dorm room. We found the bed bugs in the adjacent dorm room. They did an inspection throughout the entire dorm. They found them in his girlfriend's room, and they found them in his other girlfriend's room. So I said, bed bugs did a good deed. They ratted him out in this case. But they are hitchhikers is the point. And the basics of bed bug management is detect them early, treat them as early as you can. It's never going to be cheap, but it'll be less expensive. It'll be much, much faster if you can detect that infestation early on and find effective methods to treat those bugs rather than trying to wait it out, because you're not going to wait these bugs out unless you have years and years and of keeping an apartment empty. They tend to be closely associated with places that we sleep or we rest, but as you've already seen, they're going to hide in many places from floor to ceiling. They are going to locate their host by the fact that we're breathing out carbon dioxide, that we have body temperature. Heat is something that draws them in, and they like the way we smell. Our body odor is something that is attractive to them. And so once you're dead and are no longer breathing and no longer have body temperature, then bed bugs will not feed on a dead body, but they will feed on a live body. And your skin reaction depends. 7 out of 10 people get some sort of reaction. 3 out of 10 people will not have any sign whatsoever that they were bitten by a bed bug. The bed bug mouth parts are so slender that you will not even see that insertion point. But if you have a reaction to the protein from the saliva, then you'll get redness, you'll get welts, you may get itching, and it's going to be all over the place. Some people are going to itch a lot, others aren't going to itch very much. And those bites look like mosquito bites, and some people might look like chigger bites in others. And so a physician cannot look at a bite and say, this was caused by a bed bug. They can say it was caused by some type of insect. But where it is on the body gives you a bit of information. Bed bugs like to feed on exposed skin, and because they're attracted to CO2 or carbon dioxide, Oftentimes the bites occur around the neck or the face or your shoulders or arms or back. If you sleep with a lot of clothing at nighttime, then you don't tend to have bites everywhere. If you sleep naked, then the bites can be in many exposed places. They do not occur on the palms or the soles of your feet. They sometimes occur in rows or in groups, not always, and that is not a definitive sign. If you have bedbug evidence, that is considered to be your confirmation of bedbugs.
Let's take a moment here, let you get a drink of water, and give people a chance to take 30 seconds to scratch whatever seems to be itching on their bodies. I know I have a little bit of itchiness now just talking about the bites and the symptoms there. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the biting, sometimes looking like the irritation of the hairs of the carpet beetles, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so just remember that everything that looks like a little red pustule may not be in fact a bed bug bite. So we have to just sort of say it looks like it, but we might need more evidence before we say yes, definitively it is.
Yeah, you ask yourself, did I have these bites when I went to sleep? Yeah. No, I woke up with these bites. Okay. It might have been something that happened at night, or I might have a delayed reaction to a mosquito bite, because mosquitoes can cause delayed reactions. Mm-hmm. Chiggers or red bugs, or another name for them, can cause a delayed reaction. But you say, well, and also, where are they on the body? If they are in tight places, then, and you've been out in the woods recently, think chiggers, think red bugs. If you haven't been outdoors, then okay. What else likes to be in really tight places? It's not bed bugs. They like to bite on exposed skin. They don't like to tuck under skin to feed. They like to tuck in those type of hiding places, but not feeding places. So just different things that you have to sort of take into consideration.
Sure. So I will remind the audience that if you have a question that you'd like to ask us, there's a chat box should be available to you. That'll pop up on our end. We'll be able to answer those questions at the end of the program. You should be able to see that maybe under the More section of your toolbar to get that. Otherwise, I think we'll just continue forward. Thanks, Susan.
Okay, well, warning, we're going to see a few gross pictures here, because some people do have very, very severe reactions to bed bugs. What you're seeing here is every place the bug has put its mouth parts as it has tried to find a blood vessel that it can then penetrate. And so you see these numerous little tiny reactions, and then this person gets a blood-filled blister, so a major reaction due to the bedbug bite. And over time, it becomes this oozing sore. It develops a scarring on the body, and because this individual's reaction, these type of reactions may also be on the inside of the body as well as the outside of the body. So it drives me crazy when people say, oh, they're just a pest, they're just a nuisance. Whenever you have a reaction like this, I dare say that that is much more than a nuisance pest. The Centers for Disease Control and the Environmental Protection Agency state that bed bugs are a pest of significant public health importance. And I firmly believe that they are of significant public health importance. You have your skin reactions, you have secondary bacterial infections, you have cases where bed bugs have fed so extensively that the humans have developed anemia from blood loss. Some individuals develop asthma, others can go into anaphylactic shock. The psychological effects, people can't sleep, they're agitated, they're anxious all the time. They apply insecticides in a crazy manner where they're doing much more harm by putting out these massive amounts of insecticides in places that they shouldn't be, all because of an insect that they think requires that to control it when it doesn't. But down here on the bottom left, this individual has that massive reaction, and these bed bug bites were caused probably 6 to 8 years before this picture was taken, and she still has scarring caused by bed bugs. So yes, they do cause major health effects, and I think that we really need to recognize it for what it is. This paper came out recently saying that thus far, there's no evidence that bed bugs are able to actually spread human diseases, but they're close relatives, like bird bugs, bat bugs. Some of them can transmit diseases in the laboratory. And so this should be a worrying sign. It means that we need to do some research on this issue. But even if they don't spread disease, they do cause numerous health problems. And I firmly believe that we really need to be dealing with bed bugs on, nationwide, saying that this is a major problem and we all need to be addressing it. As far as prevention goes, recognizing the telltale signs, we need to take measures so that we reduce the risk of even getting them in the first place. And if we get them, we want to prevent them from spreading to new sites. And traveling is one way that you can pick up bed bugs. I say, have you checked for signs in your hotel and motel room when you travel? This could just as easily be if you travel to your mother-in-law's home. Have you checked for bed bugs when you go there? Your friend's house that you've gone to spend the night at. Check that room as well. But anytime you travel, you need to make this standard practice. And it doesn't take a long time. You just pull back the bedding. But more importantly, look on the underside of the bed skirt, if there's a bed skirt there, because that isn't changed out on a regular basis. We look around the seams, the underside of it, the bed frame, particularly the headboard. Behind the headboard is an excellent hiding place for bugs in hotels and motels. Undersides of your nightstand drawers, along your baseboards. And if you're traveling and staying at a hotel or motel, if you see signs of bed bugs, don't stay in that room. Ask for a room that has no common wall with that room where you found the bed bugs in it. And then modify your behavior. I no longer use the Chester drawers that is provided, and I use the luggage rack, but I first turn it over, make sure that there aren't any signs of bugs in it. If I'm really concerned, I take the luggage rack and I place it inside the bathtub, because I know they can't navigate the porcelain walls of the bathtub. But if I keep it in the room, then I pulled it away from the wall, because I know they can climb walls. And then when I get home, I'm going to immediately launder my items. I'm going to put my luggage inside a bag, a garbage bag, and I'm going to tie it off, or I'm going to keep it in my garage. I'm going to keep it in my basement. I'm not going to put it in my bedroom. When I go to secondhand stores, I'm not going to immediately take those items out. I'm going to immediately put them into my washer, dryer. And so, we're changing some of the things that we normally do because we recognize the bedbug problem. How many of you, when you go to a party at someone's home, take your coat and put it on their bed? That is not a good practice. I don't care how cold it is outside, I leave my coat in the car and I hurry in, or else I will keep my coat on, or I will try to leave it on the porch, or maybe on a coat stand at the entrance to the door. That's why coat stands were so common at the turn of the century, is because you didn't want to take your items into someone's home because bed bugs were so common. Now we're going to move into another aspect, which is sanitation or cleaning measures. And one thing that's very helpful is your vacuum cleaner. As I said, using that scraping action with the attachment is important. Using it in cracks and crevices, making sure that if it has a bag in it, you've taken it and out after you have sucked up the bed bugs, and you're putting it outdoors in the garbage rather than leaving it indoors. In my lab, we are collecting bed bugs so that I have lab colonies for rearing for research studies. And what we do is with the attachment, we will take a nylon stocking and we'll put it inside this attachment. And then as we suck up the bed bugs, they will get into this nylon stocking. Joe Boggs actually came up with this when we were having large numbers of multicolored Asian lady beetles, and so we've adapted it for bed bugs. Now, word of warning: soon as you turn off your vacuum, the bugs are going to try to crawl out of this nylon stocking. So be prepared to immediately disengage the two parts, tie off that stocking so they can't escape. And then you can just pull, you can just stretch it. You can see what you've captured inside that nylon stocking. And so that can sort of like direct your efforts to certain parts of the room to concentrate on if you want to replace the stocking as you move from room to room. So just a little tip on using a vacuum to contain bed bugs. You can take that nylon stocking, put it inside a Ziploc bag. You can stomp on the bag, then it's going to make you feel better, and then put it out in the garbage receptacle. So most people have a vacuum. Recognize though, if you have a cleaning service, you don't want them bringing their vacuum to your house to do the cleaning, because you don't know where that vacuum was in a prior home. You want to provide your own vacuum cleaner. Steaming is an important way because the heat from the steam is actually killing the bugs. It's frying those little bed bug eggs, and it's very effective in killing bed bugs. You need to work very slowly and recognize that a big blast of steam will blow bed bugs across the room from the force of that air. So typically you take a pad, you wrap it around the nozzle, it's wet, and so then you have more of a distribution without that big force of air coming out as well. You don't want to steam a mattress and box spring and immediately put on your linens, because you're going to have mold and mildew. So make sure you allow for a prolonged drying time. Use fans, you use dehumidifiers. And steam, you're not going to just use that as your one method in a room, because when the heat's gone, nothing to protect you. It was that actual high temperature that was working. So you're using other things in there as well. Laundry, using your washer and dryer is the cheapest, the most effective way you can get rid of bed bugs. And actually, it's just the dryer. You don't even have to put your items into the washer, but the reason you wash things first is odors tend to set if they get heated. And if you've got a stinky shirt and you put it in immediately in a dryer and heat it, now you're going to have a set odor. But in a dryer, you let your items dry and then you continue for 30 minutes. And the heat will then kill bed bugs and nymphs on those dry items as long as you've kept it in for that 30-minute time. So a dryer is a very, very useful piece of equipment to have. Now, cold. Cold has limitations for bed bugs because they go into dormancy, or this, people recognize the term hibernation rather than dormancy whenever it gets cold. So look at how cold you have to get it to freeze them. It has to be less than 19 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 weeks if you're freezing a small item. It has to be less than 5 degrees. It'll take about 4 days. But you're using a chest freezer in general. If you're using a top shelf or bottom shelf refrigerator freezer, then you have to go in and disable the frost-free setting. Otherwise, it's going to cycle and it's not going to maintain your temperature at this 5 degrees. Freezer can work, but it takes much, much longer time. Some companies will offer a cold treatment using dry ice. Recognize, again, that this is not a standalone measure. It should not be the only thing that is being used in that room. You need to have other things because in this case, it's the dry ice that impacts the bugs that is killing them on contact. And it will not go through certain items such as paper. So if you have bed bugs on one side of a piece of paper and you blast the other side with dry ice, the bugs will just walk off as if there was nothing that impacted them. So there are a lot of things that you have to consider whenever you're treating for bed bugs using some of these other methods. Residents should not dispose of furniture and mattresses. There's a certain, if you choose to dispose of these items, first, you're going to treat them. Secondly, you're going to deface the item. Third, you're going to wrap the item, and then you're going to take it outside for disposal. Otherwise, as you move a large item of furniture and you knock that piece of furniture up against the wall, bed bugs are going to fall off of it. You're going to have spread bed bugs throughout your home or throughout your apartment complex. People will see a nice piece of furniture put out on the curbside and they'll say, wow, this looks like a much better chest of drawers than what I have at home. I'm picking it up and taking it home. And they don't even recognize that they have just infested their home by bringing in that bed bug infested piece of furniture. So years ago, I had some funding and we developed these stickers. We put in English and in Spanish, do not take bed bugs, chinches, comma, and we're trying to spread the message that, don't take these items. And we're really trying to get the message out that this should not be a first resort. It should be a last resort. Oftentimes, you can treat furniture and actually eliminate the bed bugs. There are other things you don't want to do. For example, using ultrasonic repellent devices. They have not been shown in scientific studies to work against any sort of insect or a rat or a rodent. They are are not effective based on research studies. This study came out from Northern Arizona University saying the results of where they had tested ultrasonic pest repeller devices and found them not to be effective against bed bugs. So I found one in a home, and I took it off the wall, turned it upside down, and look at the audacity. These cockroaches come and pooped on it. They have actually used it as a harbor site where they can shed their skins on, and we got bed bugs crawling all around it. So this should tell you just how effective or ineffective this particular product is. You shouldn't use bug bombs for bed bugs. These individuals here blew out the side of their house by using too many bug bombs, more than what the label indicated, and also not recognizing that an open flame is associated with their gas water heater. You want to extinguish all flames whenever you are setting off bug bombs. They actually can worsen a bed bug problem because they irritate the surface of the insect and they cause them to scatter, and you don't kill many of the bugs to begin with. So when you have cockroaches, there was a research study a number of years ago that showed that after bug bombs were set off for the cockroaches, the neighbor apartment had cockroaches, and the same apartment still had cockroaches. And pest management companies report to me that they ask people because they see bed bugs in the kitchen, and they see them in the bathroom, and they see them all over the residence, and they'll ask them, have you used a bug bomb or one of these over-the-counter foggers? And they'll say, yeah. And they say, well, based on the distribution of these bugs, I can tell. You've scattered them all over the place. We published this paper back in 2012 on ineffectiveness of these three products. And the label says that the product will kill on contact, it'll provide effective long-term control. In the research that we did, we found that bed bugs walked away unscathed after being exposed to the insecticide droplets from these three products. So, you know, you need to be aware of some of the research versus some of the claims that are made on the labels of different products. You don't want to believe everything that you read on the internet about bed bugs. And yet I have people call me all the time and they argue with me about the facts of bed bugs because they have read this on the internet and it has to be true. No, it doesn't have to be true. And I want to direct you to some sites in a minute that are going to provide you more accurate information. But for those of you who have clients who suspect that they have bed bugs, I came up with a list of some questions that you might want to ask them. One of the things you may want to find out is if they're in a single family home or if they're in an apartment building, and recognize if they're in an apartment building that what is going on in neighboring apartments can affect them. If they're in a single family home, then it's who has visited that home. Have they traveled outside of the home? You definitely want to ask them, have you captured this suspected bed bug? If you haven't captured it and kept it so that you have somebody identified, then have you taken a photograph of it? And who's done that identification? Has it been the brother who has done the identification, or have you had an expert do the identification? If they say no, they haven't captured it, then ask them to describe the bug to you. But I can tell you that a layperson doesn't necessarily describe a bug the way an entomologist would describe a bug. ask him, well, why do you think you have bed bugs in the first place? What are the symptoms? Where do you find them in the residence? When did you first start seeing this problem? When did these symptoms first appear? Have you acquired new furniture? Have you tried to treat for bed bugs yourself? What have you done? What have been the results? We'll talk in the next webinar about a few of the legal aspects, and if you're in apartment buildings, the management is typically going to need to be involved versus if you're in a single family home. There are going to be different things going on in those situations. But now I want to give you some information on useful resources for bed bugs. And of course, I'm going to start with ones from Ohio State University. This is my bedbug website, u.osu.edu/bedbugs. You can go download the insect ID card that I mentioned. You can print these out yourself. I have a tab up here with frequently asked questions, and I've got answers, and as we speak, I'm working on a whole additional set of questions and answers that are going to be put on the site. Under the research tab, I have been putting in the published research with the summaries or the abstracts. I'm going to let Jim take you through this site real quickly so that I can take a breath before we move to our
Sure.
our
Okay,
next
so we're
one.
just going to hopefully temporarily leave the PowerPoint presentation. And we've got these sites already pulled up. So we want to get to
That's central.
this one right here. Okay, so this is Susan's site. It's one of the new u.osu.edu sites, and as she was mentioning, here is that insect ID card. If you click on it, you have the ability to then download it and print it, hand it out. That's a great resource. She mentioned additional resources that are up here. Her FAQ next to that. All of her research findings in different areas are listed here. And then here are some pictures if you need reinforcement on what do the different stages look like, or what does some of the indications you might have bed bugs, the fecal spotting, those kinds of things that are there as well. So is there anything in particular you wanted to point out here, Susan?
Why don't we just click on frequently asked questions right now?
Okay, so that's the FAQ tab. And so,
Okay, so, a common question is, are they large enough to be seen? So let's click on that. And I'm going to give you lots of details. Yes, they can be seen with the naked eye, assuming you have normal vision, of course, but they hide, and so you may not find them. Click on the next one.
next one says, how big can a bed bug get?
Okay, about half a fifth of an inch long. They become longer and fatter after they feed. I try to use some common terminology, not the fancy entomological terminology, but we've got these under different categories. So size, if somebody wants to know information, physical characteristics. Now, the next section, we're moving down to behavior of the bugs, because some people think that bed bugs will feed on lots of things other than blood. I've been really shocked at the number of things they think that they feed on. Next, we'll go down to their reproduction, their life cycle, their health impacts, what bites look like, will they be on my pets? And actually, we find that when you take your pet to the veterinarian and you use a cage, the bugs are hiding in the cage, or they're hiding in the bedding associated with the pet. Bugs don't like to stay on bodies for long periods of time. They tend to be off of the human body, but they will be in clothing, or when you've got large infestations, or when they're hitchhiking. But people are very concerned about their pets, where they come from, they have been here for eons. They actually are a close relative of a bat bug. They were found in the tombs, in Egyptian tombs. There's evidence of bed bugs. So they have been around for a long time. So I'm going to be adding more and more. And then there's a few cases where we have to use some terms. It's really hard to describe the 3 parts of an insect body without using those. So we have a glossary of common terms. If somebody wants to read one of the publications and sees a term, okay, now they can move here and get a few of those definitions. The section we're really working on is adding a lot more questions about treatment.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great start for all those really basic questions that people might have for bed bugs. And what's great to know is with confidence is that this is research-based information. This is not Orkin giving it to you. This might not be a biased source. This should be something that you should be able to use and hand out quite readily. Feel good about the integrity of the information.
Okay, let's go up also to the resources as well. And you can click on presentations. Second click there. Okay, so I have put some of my presentations up here. So you're only going to see the slides. You're not going to hear me talk at the same time. But if you're in extension and want to have access to some of these publications, just get a hold of me and I'll provide you with the PowerPoint presentation so that you're able to use it in your outreach efforts.
So will this be where you would like to put this presentation?
Yes, I would like to put this presentation here as well.
Okay, so we'll just reference that later on. Okay, great. Any other spot you want to take a look at?
Well, let's go to, there are a number of other sites that have a lot of useful information. And so the Central Ohio Bedbug Task Force is another place that you can find a lot of information. This is, it gives you a lot of information that's specific to Central Ohio. And so let's just go to Summit Presentations, that tab. Because every year we put together a free, open to the community, come to a all day or a half day summit, and we're going to talk about lots of different topics. So here you're going to see on the left that there was a presentation about the law about detecting, using canines for bedbug detection, bedbugs in the workplace, and you can actually click on those and see the presentations themselves. If you want to go up to the top right, let's go to Contact Us. You can send some questions here. We're recommending if you can contact Legal Aid Society, the Student Legal Clinic at OSU, the Columbus Urban League. We provide information on that. If you've got a problem with a hotel, it's actually the Ohio Department of Commerce. They've got the Inspection Bureau. We provide their information, but it is more focused on Central Ohio, and this is a totally volunteer organization, and we have been doing this since 2008, and for year after year after year we met on a monthly basis. Now we meet on a bi-monthly basis, and I would encourage people in the Central Ohio area to join the task force, or at least, we do have this. This is a resource that's used worldwide, and we keep information about who is using it, and so we can see the way that we've impacted basically the world by providing some useful information on bedbugs.
Mm-hmm. Is there another spot up here you wanted to pay attention to? You mentioned treatment before. Is that going to be something that...
Treatment here, click on professional pest management. Here's some information on choosing a pest management professional to treat for bed bugs, some of the questions that you might ask them. I have an OSU Extension fact sheet that goes into this as well, but here it's easy to see the list of questions. Some tips for preparing for a treatment are here as well. We don't recommend specific products. We're trying to give you options that you can choose among, because this is more, we're really trying to prevent bed bugs and get the word out. So over on the left, we have the do's and don'ts of bed bugs, minimizing infestation, tips for travelers, tips for shopping at a thrift store, moving tips. And so trying to target different audiences in different scenarios. But this is one way. But let's go back to the presentation. Let me tell you a little bit about some other resources.
And you'll be covering more of the treatments in the next webinar, correct?
My next webinar is going to solely focus on treatment.
Excellent.
But this, I want to give you the background, because then you can better understand treatments if you understand something about the life history and the biology of these bugs and how easily they disperse. So here is the Central Ohio Bed Bug Task Force, and I put in some of the features of it. There's even tabs where you can, if you're in the hospitality industry, schools. We have a school letter that you can print out and put your school's name in that notify the school, other people in the classroom that a bed bug was found, those presentations, and then those resources specific to Central Ohio. Now, Cuyahoga County has a link to resources specific to the Cleveland area, and actually some places for where you can get some services to pay for certain clientele in the Cleveland area, which we don't have in Central Ohio. They don't have a conference every year, but they have presentations every few years, and you can click on those presentations, and they've actually been videotaped, so you'll be able to hear the audio as well. University of Minnesota, they have an excellent website. They have resources in, I want to say, about 6 or 7 different languages, written resources as well as video tutorials. They've received a lot of funding through EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to set up this website, and it's just an outstanding resource, particularly with all of those video tutorials. Stop Pests and Housing is also a useful resource. They don't just talk about bed bugs, but they kind of give you an IPM approach to dealing with other household pests. So things like rodents, like cockroaches and the like, they have videos and written guides. And then in housing, if you want to adopt an IPM program, they actually will offer this as a resource, and they have funding to do that. And you can get more information from that website. Cornell has some downloadable fact sheets, pamphlets. They have Spanish language fact sheets and resources. Now, Bedbug Central is a site, a commercial site. They are promoting some of their products. So I put down here, we're not endorsing specific products or services, but they do have some useful video tutorials. And so, realize though that this is a commercial site. But coming soon, I am working on a bedbug field guide, a mobile app. We have funding that is being provided through the Department of Agriculture via EPA Region 5, and we're going to have this mobile app, and hopefully in the next few months, this will be something that's available. We're calling it the Bedbug Field Guide. I'll send out an announcement when this is available. So I hope you are now a bit more familiar with the growing bedbug problem, as if you weren't already familiar with it. But now you can put some facts and figures with that problem, recognizing the signs of bugs, some of the really important features of their biology, some of them, the many health effects that are caused by bed bugs. Want to make sure you can protect yourself and your clients, some of the questions you may want to ask, and then recognize some of the more useful resources that are out there. Want to definitely acknowledge the Extension IPM program and USDA NIFA, also the Ohio Pest Management Association, and the many pest management companies that participated in the survey, Ohio Bedbug Task Force, and then people in my lab who helped with the presentation and some of the research that we've been presenting. And then tell you, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Now, if you want to know the rest of that ditty, goes sleep. Okay, we'll start. Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. If they do, grab your shoe, knock them till they're black and blue, and that's called mechanical control. Okay. So thank you, and I hope you've learned some, at least a bit of new information if you didn't already know some of these details, and then I will try to answer questions.
Right, so we're going to have a Q&A session. There aren't a lot of questions in the chat area now, but there is one thing that I wanted to mention. If we go one slide more, because this is funded by USDA NIFA, one of the requirements that they ask us is to evaluate what you thought of the presentation, parts of it that you liked or didn't like, what you learned from it. So you can copy this link down, or I believe in a day or so you're going to get this link, and then there's 10 quick questions you might be able to answer for us. They're basically multiple choice. So if you could take that, that would be great. Like I say, you'll probably have multiple opportunities to get that presented to you to take it, but we really do value that feedback to let us know what you liked and didn't like about the presentation, and most importantly, what you took away from it, what we can do better next time.